Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. A comprehensive system of bail reform is currently under consideration for Trinidad and Tobago. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday, 1st August 2022. Details when we return.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. Trinidad and Tobago's Attorney General Reginald Amor, SC, in the wake of a recent Privy Council ruling, alluded to a comprehensive system of bail reform being under consideration for the Twin Island Republic. More in this TTT News item.
A media release from the Office of the Attorney General says the focus of bail reform is to encompass legislation that will secure the rights of all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and to take into account the views of key stakeholders and experts, including criminologists. In a ruling delivered on Thursday, the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council dismissed the appeal brought by the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. The ruling stems from a lawsuit brought against the Attorney General by Annan Ramlogan SC on behalf of former murder accused Achille Charles. The Privy Council determined that the provisions contained in Section 5.1 and the first schedule of the Bail Act 1994 are not existing laws so as to be saved from constitutional challenge and is not reasonably justifiable under the Constitution.
Meantime, a response from Attorney General's office to the Privy Council's ruling that incarcerated people charged with murder can apply for bail. The Attorney General says the Privy Council's ruling has determined that the provisions contained in Section 5.1 and the first schedule of the Bail Act 1994 are not existing laws, so as to be saved from constitutional challenge and were not reasonably justifiable under the Constitution. However, the AG's office says that the ruling highlights and accepts some fundamental considerations that have been previously espoused by the government on the issue of bail, such as the reduction of violent crime. Jewel Brown of TV6 News reports.
The Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Legal Affairs has said the ruling of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council in the matter of the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago versus Achille Charles upheld and agreed with the local Court of Appeal's recent decision that persons accused of murder are entitled to apply for bail. The AG's office said it is significant that whilst not accepting as lawful a blanket denial of bail for the offence of murder, the ruling nevertheless accepts that instead of removing the court's discretion altogether, legislation could in fact be implemented to impose conditions on the exercise of the court's discretion to grant bail, or where a stricter approach is required, sufficient cause could be shown. The AG's office said this approach was taken by the government when it recently sought to extend Act 17 of 2019, which provides for the denial of bail in certain specified circumstances whilst maintaining the court's discretion to grant bail in exceptional circumstances. The opposition did not support the Bail Amendment Bill, which sought to allow for the continued denial of bail for 120 days for those charged with specific violent crime offences. On Thursday, the AG's office made no mention of measures such as the use of electronic ankle monitoring bracelets for persons facing murder charges who apply for and are granted bail by the court. One day after the government failed to get the support of all of the 9 independent senators in the upper house for the Bail Amendment Bill, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley responded to a question about a suggestion by opposition Senator Jayantila Chimidial regarding the use of ankle monitoring bracelets.
The fact of the matter is that the use of the bracelet is a part of the package of tools that we're using to respond to the criminal element. Right. Whether enough of it is being used or so is another story. But the bottom line is, it is not a substitute, right, for people who are on a number of charges for violent antisocial action, go in and come out of the revolving door.
In a statement, Senator Lakshmi Dayal said the Privy Council's judgment on Thursday, allowing for murder accused to apply for bail, vindicates the opposition in terms of its position in relation to the recent Bail Amendment Bill 2022. The AG's office said the Privy Council's ruling highlights and accepts further some fundamental considerations that have been previously espoused by the government on the issue of bail. They include a concern that the courts have been too liberal in granting bail to repeat offenders. There was the need to ensure that persons charged with murder do not abscond and that they do not interfere with witnesses or otherwise obstruct the course of justice. The courts must be especially respectful of Parliament's choice to use the provisions contained in Section 13 of the Constitution to pass legislation in that form and must give great weight to the judgment of Parliament regarding the importance of the public interest which is sought to be promoted. The AG's office also referenced an undertaking of Attorney General Reginald Amor, Senior Counsel, given during the Senate's debate of the Bail Amendment Act on July 6th of 2022, and said that a comprehensive system of bail reform is currently under consideration by the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Legal Affairs. Jewel Brown, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Jamaica's Dion Jackson Miller, legal analyst for Television Jamaica, delves deeper into the recent Privy Council ruling that upheld Trinidad and Tobago's appeal court ruling that the denial of bail to anyone on murder charge is unconstitutional.
First of all, why is this case of interest to us here in Jamaica?
Well, first of all, Herman, the Privy Council continues to be our final court of appeal, and we're also having the discussion about bail here in Jamaica. The government has signaled that it wants to amend the Bail Act, and there have been concerns as to whether they're going to go the route of trying to shut out bail completely, and that is because of a statement that the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Minister made in Parliament when she said, in reference to the amendments that are to come, if you're on gun charge, you cannot be at large. If you're on murder charge, you cannot be at large.
So expound a bit more. What was the problem with the Trinidad Bail Act?
All right. Well, if we could just bring up our first slide and just tell you quickly in terms of the facts. This was a man who had been charged with murder. He wasn't offered bail because the Bail Act says you can't get bail if you're charged with certain offenses, including murder. He ended up spending 8 years in custody. And at the end of that time, it was found that he had no case to answer. So if we could bring up the next slide now, because the Trinidad and Tobago Bail Act, as I mentioned, has a provision that says you can't get bail if you're charged with murder. But at the same time, the Constitution gives a right to bail in the terms that we have up there on the slide. And all that really says is that Parliament cannot deny bail unless it is justified in a society that respects, the rights and freedoms of people. So what the Privy Council did was to say, look, we understand why you might need to remand somebody in custody, right? For law and order purposes, perhaps to stop the interference with witnesses, and we have this up on another slide, perhaps to stop the person from committing other offenses. But when you shut out bail completely, when you say you can't get bail, if it is you're charged with murder, then certain rights are being infringed. This includes the right to liberty, the right to bail, as well as the right not to be arbitrarily detained.
So just to be clear, is it that even in high crime societies like Trinidad and Tobago or Jamaica, bail can't be prohibited for people charged with serious crimes?
Okay. You never say never, but I am going to say that following this Privy Council ruling, plus following a ruling by our own court some years ago in a case called Nation, it's going to be very difficult to see how a government can absolutely prohibit bail in certain circumstances. And the Privy Council gave their reasons for this. One of the main reasons is that this takes away the discretion of the court. It says to the court, you have to treat everybody charged with murder the same way. And one of the examples given, imagine a terrorist who kills a whole heap of people trying to bring down the government. That person could be charged with murder. Imagine somebody who has a loved one dying of a terminal disease in extreme pain, and killing that person just to put him or her out of their misery. This would make that the court have to treat both of these people in the same way, and shutting out that discretion is always going to be problematic. Additionally, the court said that this is going to be unfair because, as in this situation, you could have somebody who is now in custody for years when there isn't enough evidence against them, and that is going to be a problem. In addition, it also means that what you really have now, is that the police, if the police say, I'm going to charge you with murder, it's essentially the police who are deciding that you have to stay in custody because the Bail Act cuts in at that point and prohibits the grant of bail. So the court did say, though, that what can be done is restrictions can be placed on the use of the court's discretion, so you can restrict the circumstances in which bail can be granted, but shutting it out, that's a no-no.
No, there. Leon Jackson Miller, or a legal analyst.
Progress with the United Nations AIDS program has been delayed because of the global COVID-19 crisis.
New data from UNAIDS on the global HIV response revealed that during the last 2 years of COVID-19 and other global crises, progress against the HIV pandemic has delayed, resources have shrunk, and millions of lives are at risk. There were 650,000 AIDS-related deaths last year despite the availability of effective HIV treatment and tools to prevent, detect, and treat infections. There have been robust declines in new infections in the Caribbean and Western and Central Africa over several years. However, these gains are threatened by a tightening resource crunch. The report also shows that efforts to ensure that all people living with HIV are accessing life-saving antiretroviral treatment are delaying. The number of people on HIV treatment grew more slowly in 2021 than it has in over a decade. And while 3/4 of all people living with HIV have access to antiretroviral treatment, approximately 10 million people do not. There were an estimated 330,000 people living with HIV in the Caribbean in 2021. According to a report from 2010 to 2021, AIDS-related deaths in the region declined by 50%, while there were 5,700 deaths last year. An estimated 14,000 people contracted HIV in 2021, translating into 217 new infections every week in the Caribbean. 34% of new HIV infections last year were among Caribbean young people aged 15 to 24.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.